Mark Carney has kind of touted himself in the last campaign here in Canada that he is the economic guy. He's the guy you call in a crisis, and he's more focused on Canada's economic issues. And that's why a lot of what I'm seeing right now with him reaching out to Modi, or Prime Minister Modi, is really the idea that he wants to restart that relationship from an economic perspective. Because what India is the number 5 economy in the world, it only makes sense to you would want to establish a solid economic relationship there. And so obviously we know that Prime Minister Modi will bring up the Khalistan issue with Prime Minister Carney. And the issue that we're seeing here in Canada is there's not a whole lot of political will to address the Khalistan issue here. And so it's going to be on Prime Minister Modi to really make his argument to Prime Minister Carney, even get him any movement. PM Carney is only focused on one thing, and that is economy and the economic relationship in terms of getting a solid trading relationship, a relationship happening with anybody who isn't America right now. And so that is really where Mark Carney's mind is at. And I don't even think Mark Carney even knows much of the history of the Khalistan issue and what's going on between India, Khalistan, Hindus, and Sikhs in that history. I don't think he's even fully aware. And so I don't know how much political will there is going to be there. So it's going to be really the burden of truth is going to rely on Prime Minister Modi to make his argument towards Carney to make something happen there. I don't think Mark Carney fully understands the history of all this. And quite frankly, to be fair to him as well, most Canadians have no idea. They see some things in the media, and we saw it from Justin Trudeau and the likes of Jagmeet Singh in the past parliament, where there was a lot of like, hey, they killed a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. That was the narrative. And so people don't really understand it. Specifically, Canadians don't fully understand the relationship and the history that is there between Khalistan and these other different groups. So there's going to be a lot of, sure, they're going to see the protests. Canadians themselves aren't going to think much of it. Of course, the Hindu community here in Canada is going to be very concerned about these things. And I've had conversations with people in that community, and yes, they are very concerned, and rightfully so. But in terms of the political will of Canada, people are just going to be like, oh, I've heard something on CBC before about it. I've heard something on CTV about it, but I haven't really heard much about this. Like, I don't see this as a threat to me. So they're not going to think much of it. So the internal workings of politics here in Canada aren't going to put much pressure on Mark Carney. Mark Carney himself will see the protests and he will dismiss it as he typically does to anyone who opposes him. So it's going to be, as I said, go back to Prime Minister Modi to really make clear his beliefs and what he sees, and he needs to be able to make his argument very clear to Prime Minister Carney if he wants to see any movement on the extremist side of the relationship between India and Canada. As I said, the only way that that's going to happen is Prime Minister Modi is going to have to tie a trading relationship. He's going to have to try it since economic ties to that extradition because there is zero political will. And I'm going to be very clear with you. There is zero political will when it comes to the Khalistan issue here in Canada. No one knows anything about it. So when you hear extradition, it's like, oh, Canadians, when they hear India now, India is the new Russia here in Canada. They're just trying to mess around our elections, mess around our political processes. Of course, anything that India demands, people are going to be like, they're going to shrug it off. And we're even seeing it here in Canada, where members of the Khalistan movement are getting on the CTV, the CBCs of the world, which are the big news networks here in Canada that many people listen to, and they're allowing them to speak their narrative. I'm not seeing a whole lot of Hindus hopping on these networks to speak their perspective. It's a lot of Khalistanis hopping on. And so Canadians are only hearing one side of it. And right now, Canadians due to the work of Justin Trudeau and the likes of Jagmeet Singh in the past parliament, they've done a good job of poisoning the well of Canadians and how they view India. So again, it's going to be heavy on Modi to try and make something work if he really wants to make that extradition happen. However, when it comes to Canada themselves, I don't think Mark Carney's likely to move on it. I think it's a big thing for Canada because as we've seen, the last time Prime Minister Modi came to Canada was 10 years ago. And that relationship between him and Justin Trudeau was very tenuous. And what we saw here in Canada was we had a minority government, and it was upheld by the likes of Jagmeet Singh, who was leading the NDP party at the time. And what happened there is, I suspect, this is more just me looking into it, was that Jagmeet had a huge influence on Justin Trudeau's decisions on how he treated India. And we know that Jagmeet Singh had his own dicey past in terms of the groups that he was connected to, allegedly. And so there were some conversations there that, like, maybe there was something there why Justin Trudeau took such a heavy hand against India. So now that Trudeau's out of the way, Jagmeet Singh is out of the way, we have this quote unquote new parliament. This is going to be Mark Carney. This was a gesture from Mark Carney to, like, hey, we're going to restart this trading relationship. Let's forget what's in the past. Let's move forward to what is ahead. And that's why I say this is also Modi's opportunity to have those conversations to try and tie what he wants from an extremist perspective in terms of the Khalistani group and tie it to some economic outcomes with his relationship with Canada. You're seeing it here in the G7, inviting Prime Minister Modi to Canada. That is what they're doing. That is going to be, it'll be interesting to hear the conversation and what comes of that meeting between Mark Carney and Modi to be able to kind of develop some trading relationships, develop some positive outcomes for both countries. And this right now, what we see here in late June, this is the moment. And however this goes is how it's going to dictate the relationship moving forward. If it goes well, India and Canada will come closer together all of a sudden. And it might be a long game for Prime Minister Modi to get everything he wants. And it's going to be a long game for Mark Carney to get everything he wants. But this is going to be the start of that relationship. And if that first meeting goes well, this will be a positive moment for both countries moving forward.